This is Newsday on the BBC. I'm Rico Hizon in Singapore. The headlines. Trump and the porn star. Now his team admit he did cover the cost of silencing Stormy Daniels.
Were you lying to us at the time, or were you in the dark?
The president has denied and continues to deny the underlying claim.
At least 125 people are killed as dust storms batter India.
Hello, I'm Nuala McGovern in London. Also on the programme, being a refugee wasn't enough. Now elephants threaten the Rohingya camps in Bangladesh. And Bill Cosby and Roman Polanski have been expelled from the Hollywood Academy, which awards the Oscars.
Live from our studios in Singapore and London. This is BBC World News. It's Newsday.
Glad you could join us. It's 7 in the morning here in Singapore, midnight in London, and 7 in the evening in Washington, D.C., where the story about President Trump's relationship with a porn star has taken another dramatic twist. It has emerged Mr. Trump did pay back his lawyer for buying the silence of Stormy Daniels, who claims they had an affair. And in what could be more trouble for the president, it has been reported investigators monitored the phone lines of the lawyer, Michael Cohen. With more on the fast-moving developments, here's John Sopel.
This is the story of the porn star, the president, and the president's personal lawyer. Stormy Daniels claims she had a one-night fling with Donald Trump in 2006, but was paid $130,000 10 years later, just coincidentally, weeks before the presidential election, to buy her silence. The money was handed over by this man, Michael Cohen, the president's Mr. Fix-It, who says he paid her the cash out of a personal account and was never reimbursed by the president. Donald Trump has always denied the affair and has maintained he knew nothing of the payment. He was asked about it on Air Force One 4 weeks ago.
So you know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels?
No.
Why did Michael Cohen make it if there was no truth around it?
Well, you have to ask Michael Cohen. Michael's an attorney, and you'll have to ask Michael Cohen.
But now that story's been flatly contradicted by former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who joined the Trump legal team 2 weeks ago, and says the president has paid Cohen the money.
He was definitely reimbursed. There's no doubt about it.
So why did he say he wasn't?
Maybe. First of all, if we had to defend this as not being a campaign contribution, I think we could do that. This was for personal reasons.
And last night, in a separate Fox interview, he talked about how much the president knew about what was going on.
He didn't know about the specifics of it, as far as I know. But he did know about the general arrangement that Michael would take care of things like this, like I take care of things like this.
This morning, the president's spokeswoman was ambushed in the White House grounds about what she knew and when. She repeatedly said that she gave out the best information she had at the time. But then at the briefing, a truly jaw-dropping moment about how totally out of the loop she was.
When did you specifically know that the president repaid Mr. Cohen for the $130,000, you personally?
The first awareness I had was during the interview last night.
It's very hard to avoid the conclusion that someone has been lying. Is it the president? Is it his personal lawyer, Michael Cohen? Or is it Rudy Giuliani, who seems to have tried to put out a fire with a can of kerosene? Certainly, all these statements cannot be reconciled. I suppose the bigger question is, does anyone care? Certainly past disclosures have done him no harm with his supporters, but lawyers tend to be less accommodating. Today, the president proclaimed a national day of prayer across America. But if he's been willing the Stormy Daniels saga to go away, those prayers haven't been answered. John Sopel, BBC News, Washington.
Well, let's cross now to our Washington correspondent Chris Buckler. Interesting to hear John Sopel there saying that the Stormy Daniels saga does not seem to be going away. But Mr. Trump has weathered many storms, we could say politically, previous to this. Do you think his supporters care?
I don't think those who are Trump supporters and very much firmly in the Make America Great camp will really feel that this is going to damage the president entirely. What there is, though, is a huge amount of focus on this because it has all the qualities of a tabloid sensation. It has allegations of sex, it has hush money payments, and it has plenty of lies. Denials that have since been clarified, denials which have since then been frankly denied again, and we've got truth coming forward, and these ideas that in fact, although Donald Trump said that he didn't know anything about this money, all of a sudden we now know that he did know something about the money and indeed was repaying it. So it is all those qualities that makes it a story that's not going to go away. The bigger question, I suppose, for Donald Trump and the bigger concern is just in Washington they often like to follow the money. That's why we have this new strategy, which Rudy Giuliani was very keen on presenting in that interview on Fox News. He was saying that this money had nothing to do with campaign finances. And that's because if the money had come from campaign funds, then potentially it could have been a crime. So that's the strategy that's playing out. At the same time, though, you have Stormy Daniels' own lawyer going around the news networks and saying, well, that might be one thing, but is there potential questions about this cash given that it was paid for in what appear to be bogus legal bills? There are still lots of questions for Donald Trump and still potentially pitfalls as far as Stormy Daniels is concerned.
Chris, briefly, can you explain for our viewers where Michael Cohen and his phone being tapped plays into this? Because it's quite a complicated story.
Yeah, we have to be clear about this at the moment as well. Although NBC News in America initially said that his phone had been tapped, actually it has now been clarified that it was only monitored. So basically what was being done is they had a list of phone calls that were made to and from his phone. So it is not a wiretap in itself, it is just a monitoring of phone calls, which is something very different. However, the criminal investigation into Michael Cohen's business dealings continue, and we know also that the special counsel Robert Mueller, who's investigating those allegations of Russian interference in the presidential election in 2016, we know that he is also wants to ask Donald Trump about his relationship with Michael Cohen. So Michael Cohen as a lawyer and somebody who's close to Donald Trump, still there are many questions surrounding him and still that criminal investigation.
You'll have a busy few days ahead of you, as I think it has been for the past year. Chris Buckler, thank you very much, speaking to us from Washington, D.C. Also making news today. In Pakistan, a heat wave has gripped the city of Karachi with temperatures that have gone up to 43 degrees Celsius. Earlier last week, the city of Nawab Shah in southern Pakistan set a global record for the month of April, the mercury rising to over 50 degrees Celsius. Police in Malaysia have opened an investigation into Mahathir Mohamad, 92-year-old opposition leader, former Prime Minister. He's been probed over suspicions he spread fake news after saying the plane he used for political campaigning had been sabotaged. Mr Mahathir is challenging Prime Minister Najib Razak in next week's elections. Critics argue the new law against false news is designed to muzzle opposition. The Venezuelan government has announced the arrest of 11 senior executives from the country's leading bank, that's Banesco. The chief prosecutor said the officials, including the bank's president, have been arrested after an investigation into hundreds of accounts. Mr. Saab said irregularities had been found that had damaged Venezuela's currency. And Twitter has asked its users to change their passwords. The microblogging site said a technical glitch had led some passwords to be stored in plain text. Twitter said the error had been fixed, but passwords ought to be changed out of an abundance of caution. And the former Volkswagen chief executive Martin Winterkorn has been charged by U.S. prosecutors in Detroit. Now it's over the diesel emission scandal. He's been accused of conspiring to mislead regulators about the company's efforts to cheat the emissions of its diesel vehicles. And to this guy. A young owl has found a home in the house of Scottish park keeper, here beside him. The fledgling is just 6.5 weeks old and has been named Benedict after Sherlock Holmes star Benedict Cumberbatch. Doesn't look like him. The park keeper and his family say having an owl as a house guest is a hoot.
The number of people killed in the Indian states of Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh has reached more than 100. Emergency workers are now trying to clear debris and restore power supplies. More storms are expected in the coming days. Our South Asia correspondent Justin Rolat has more.
The storm swept across North India, bringing devastation. Winds of over 80 miles an hour uprooted electricity pylons. The arcing cables sparked this ferocious fire. Storms are common in India at this time of year, but this one was much bigger than had been forecast. First, the wind whipped up great clouds of choking dust. It was a struggle just to walk down the street. Trees were uprooted, buildings brought down. Then came the rain, torrential rain. As always, it was the poorest who suffered most. Many were killed when their feeble mud and brick homes collapsed, crushing those inside. There were widespread power cuts. Storm debris closed roads and railways, making it hard for rescue teams to get to those in need. Hospitals were busy caring for the people who were injured as the tempest left wreckage in its wake. It will be days before power and other services are fully restored, said officials. Meanwhile, the forecasters have warned that the turbulent weather is not over. More powerful storms are on their way. Justin Rolat, BBC News, Delhi.
And now to another danger for Rohingya refugees. Elephants. You may know that there are almost 700,000 people that have fled their homes in the Buddhist majority Myanmar after a series of violent military crackdowns against them. But wild elephants have become unwelcome visitors now into some of their sprawling camps in southern Bangladesh, causing destruction.
Sebaik Norway, etare Hana Zevela will get the idea for a kit of Hana Zevela, Adam Kitu, Alcultivere, Antimonte, Hoji. Test to no mother Velan for Anti-Israeli.
And you're watching Newsday on the BBC, live from Singapore and London. Still to come in the program. Scandals aside, some members of the U.S. Congress want Donald Trump to be nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Is this idea outlandish? Welcome back, everyone. You're watching Newsday on the BBC. I'm Rico Hizon in Singapore.
And I'm Nuala McGovern in London. Our top stories. President Trump confirms that he reimbursed his attorney for buying the silence of a porn actress about an alleged affair.
At least 125 people are killed as dust storms batter India. And Hawaii has passed a bill banning the sale of most sunscreen products to try to protect the island's coral reefs. It could force companies to make changes to their products, which account for $2 billion in U.S. sales each year. This story is popular on BBC.com. Let's now take a look at some of the front pages from around the world, and we start off with the international edition of the Japan Times, and it leads with another possible stage in the thawing relations between the United States and North Korea. President Trump hinting that the release of 3 Americans being held in North Korea is imminent. The paper notes that securing the release would be a key win for Mr. Trump. Let's now turn the page, and it is now the Philippine Daily Inquirer, and it has this striking image. It says it shows a Chinese military base nearing completion on an atoll in the South China Sea land that is claimed by Taiwan, Vietnam, and the Philippines. And as Malaysia gears up for next week's general election, the Straits Times has these pictures. Both the Prime Minister and the opposition leader out campaigning in what the paper calls rival territory. Well, Najib Razak is in Penang State, and Mahathir Mohamad is at a rally in Putrajaya. And those are the top stories of key publications around the world. And now, Nula, which story is sparking discussions online?
Well, let's take a look at what's trending right now, Rico. This is a story on the BBC website. A cleaner in South Korea found 7 gold bars worth a total of $350 million in a rubbish bin at Incheon Airport. The bars, weighing a kilogram each, were wrapped in newspapers. Why were they thrown away? Well, police aren't sure. But the bad news is the cleaner may not get a reward. The airport says it's part of the cleaner's job to find lost things.
In Hollywood, Bill Cosby and Roman Polanski have been expelled from the U.S. Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Earlier this year, the Academy, which runs the Oscars, had also kicked out Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein. TV star Bill Cosby was convicted of sexual assault last month, while Oscar-winning director Roman Polanski admitted statutory rape of a 13-year-old girl in 1977. Earlier spoke to the BBC's Peter Bose in Los Angeles. He says with these 2 expulsions, the Academy wants to send a clear message.
Well, the Academy is sending a message that it won't tolerate this kind of behaviour and perhaps other behaviours as well anymore. And in fact, it met last December to change its code of conduct, which probably explains what is happening now. Some people have questioned why has it taken so long, 40 years, for Roman Polanski to be kicked out of this organisation. Well, the Academy is essentially working to a new set of rules now, and that code of conduct says in part that it is an organisation where there is no place for people who abuse their status, power or influence in a manner that violates standards of decency. It also includes a provision to suspend or expel those who compromise the integrity of the organisation. And clearly the message is that Bill Cosby and Roman Polanski have done just that.
So with this new code of conduct by the Academy, could there be more expulsions, Peter?
It is quite possible that there could be more expulsions. As everyone is well aware, many well-known figures over the last few months have been accused of sexual harassment, other allegations as well. Now, very few have faced criminal charges, and in a few cases, criminal investigations are still underway. There are some civil lawsuits as well. And it's my hunch that the Academy will continue to look at those individuals who are members of this organisation and whatever might be happening in their private and now very public lives to see whether those individuals are worthy of continuing membership.
But this code of conduct, will it really take real action? Will it be genuine in trying to stamp out sexual harassment and abuse in the industry?
Well, this is just one measure, of course, that's being taken in Hollywood. This is a very clear and public statement by the Academy. But ever since the allegations against Harvey Weinstein last October, the industry has really been looking at itself, studios in terms of how they operate, how people report claims of sexual harassment in the workplace. There's certainly a new movement that auditions, for example, will not take place in hotel rooms, and other measures as well that Hollywood is trying trying to implement. So what the Academy is saying today is very public, and of course it's a global organisation that puts on a very high-profile event, the Oscars, every year. It's sending out that statement, but at a practical level, other things are changing in Hollywood.
Now let's turn to home, to the largest and most diverse botanical living plant collection in the world. And now Kew Gardens in West London will see its Victorian glasshouse open once again. The BBC's Victoria Gill reports.
5 years, 15,000 panes of glass and more than 5,000 litres of paint. The restoration of the world's largest Victorian glasshouse has been a labour of love. But when I had a sneak preview just 2.5 weeks ago, this was still very much a building site.
Thanks to the inclement weather, this project has been set back weeks. It's now a real race against time. But in just over a fortnight, the temperate house will open to the public, and it's already home to half of the 10,000 plants that will be housed here.
The garden inside this vast greenhouse is a snapshot of the life that grows in temperate climates all around the world. And for many of these plants, this is their only refuge.
We've got a real important job to keep these things going. Some plants that are maybe down to a few individuals in the wild, wildfire, an earthquake, and they're gone.
Among the greenery are species that harbour natural medicines, now used to treat potentially lethal diseases, including malaria. And in his first visit here, Sir David Attenborough highlighted the importance of Kew's scientific work.
It's here that people can study these consequences of not only diseases but invasive plants, plants that can come in and be more vigorous than some of our native plants and drive them to extinction.
For the first time since it was opened in 1863, the house was stripped back to bare metal. Every part of its structure has been examined in detail.
The Temperate House is the largest surviving Victorian glasshouse in the world. So for Kew, this was a hugely important project, both to bring these plants back to their home, but also to restore this building back to its beauty.
Open to the public once again, this great building is fulfilling its original Victorian purpose, providing a home for some of the world's most precious plants. Victoria Gill, BBC News, Kew Gardens.
Earlier we were talking about the scandal surrounding President Trump, but there's also been speculation that he should win the Nobel Peace Prize. In fact, 18 Republican congressmen sent a letter to the Nobel Committee nominating him for the honor. They cite his work in bringing the North and South Koreans to the table, as Matt Morrison explains.
Ask President Trump and he'd likely say the people have spoken. He deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. After all, his predecessor got one, and after only a year in office. Even he seemed a little surprised at that accolade.
I did get the Nobel Peace Prize.
Oh, really? What was that for?
To be honest, I still don't know.
That's so good. All right.
Way before Obama, President Teddy Roosevelt nabbed a Nobel in 1906 for helping end the Russo-Japanese War. It's an interesting choice. He was also the man who led the Rough Riders in the Battle of San Juan. And the blurring of war and peace hardly ended there. George C. Marshall was Franklin Roosevelt's Army Chief of Staff before he went on to win the Nobel for his plan to rebuild Europe. Away from the battlefield, not all picks have looked good in hindsight. Myanmar's Aung San Suu Kyi seemed like a lock back in 1991. She'd been living under house arrest by the military junta. But amid criticism of her handling of the Rohingya crisis, some think she no longer deserves the award. But perhaps one contradiction tops them all.
The President has sent me here for what he hopes will be the final phase of the negotiations to end the war in Indochina.
Henry Kissinger shared the prize in 1973 for negotiating an armistice in the Vietnam War. But as Nixon's right-hand man, history also knows him for his role in the secret wars in Cambodia and Laos. And sometimes the world is just too violent for any Peace Prize winner.
No Nobel Peace Prize this year? Why not? It's that man again.
The Nobel Committee decided not to award anyone during the height of World War II. That's right, no one was peaceful enough. Anywhere. On Earth, nobody. Then again, why should we be surprised at this mix of war and peace, bombast and blessed virtue? Alfred Nobel, the man who founded the award, made his fortune in part by inventing dynamite. And there's no one more explosive on the global stage these days than Donald J. Trump. Matt Morrison, BBC News.
And that's it from us. Goodbye for now.